Good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. Okay, I'm John, alcoholic. You know, I'm going to skip the Max C stuff today because we've got a lot to cover. I will say, you know, because Matthew here, this is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in their basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic book using a dictionary published about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. So that's just for your benefit, a little bit of a history on us. No paperwork today, guys. Woo! Nor next week. So today, I'm sorry, let's open with the set-aside prayer. I'm all spaced out today, so. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, welcome. I hope everybody had a good Christmas. We've got a ton to cover today, so I'm going to be going a little faster than I usually do, if you can believe that. We didn't finish last week. I had some stuff I wasn't able to get to, and probably we'll have a little bit of stuff that we don't get to today. I did want to say one thing that I didn't talk about. John, can you turn around and read Tradition 10? Tradition 10, yeah.
Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never to be drawn into public controversy.
Okay, so Tradition 10, you know, just a quick little story. We don't get involved in anything other than carrying the message to other alcoholics. There was a group, and I think I mentioned this before, in the mid-1840s called the Washingtonians, and it was one alcoholic helping another alcoholic to recover. And it was only the second time in human history where there were large numbers of recoveries from this disease. And these guys, with no phones, no internet, they got to about 200,000 members around the Washington, D.C. area. And I mean, it was just unprecedented. And then all of a sudden what happened is there was a divisive election, much like the one that we just had. And they said, hey, we're so good at this, let's get involved in the election. They tried to stop the selling of booze, and they also got involved in religion, right? So when they got involved in these outside issues, instead of just recovery from alcoholism, the whole movement fell apart within a year, and just about every one of them, to a man, died drunk. And, that's why we don't, and this almost happened to AA. That's one of the reasons Bill wrote the 12 and 12 was to push the traditions on the society. So, I got to think that if I don't live by and practice the 12 steps, I might drink and I might die. But if we as a whole do not live by those traditions on the wall, we might all fail, and we might all drink, and we might all die. So that's why we've got those traditions, and I know I haven't really talked a lot about them in this session, but they're very, very important. So, all right, so we are on chapter 7, working with others.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just one thing when we get going so fast.
Yep.
When periodically during your talking, could you say, okay, back to page
Okay.
Because otherwise we keep going, oh, I got lost.
Yeah.
Where are we? That old reference of,
Sure.
you know, a page.
I get lost too, so, but yeah, you know what, yeah, just speak out if you get lost too, but I'm going to be going fast today. So top of the page, chapter 7, working with others. Now, obviously this chapter comes after we've done all of the steps. I mean, I see a lot of people in AA, you know, they go straight from step 1 to step 12. And we can't do that, because if you go straight from step 1 to step 12, what do you have to offer the newcomer, right? All you can tell them is you can say, go to more meetings, show up early, make coffee, join the Sober Softball League, call me every morning. But if you haven't done the steps, you can't take anybody through the steps. And I see this going on in AA. And you know, another thing I see too is there's a lot of what we call heavier problem drinkers that might get a DWI or two, and the judge sentences them to AA, and they come to the meetings and they sober up without doing any of the work, and they like us, maybe they like the girls, they like the fellowship, and they stick around and they try to sponsor other people, and you know, when they do that again, they haven't worked the steps, and they can't take people through the steps. And you know, I've seen alcoholics drink and die because of that. So we've got to be real careful when we're picking our sponsors, that they are alcoholics. So page 89, at the top of the page, we're going to write program of identification. This is a program of identification. Bill saw early on the importance of sharing our stories so people didn't think that they were so unique. A lot of people come into AA and they think, hey man, I'm the only one that has this issue. I thought I'm addicted to crack, I'm addicted to booze, I'm a blackout drinker. For a while I didn't do anything and I gambled. Then for a while I just was taking Vicodin by the handful, and I said, nobody's like me, nobody can help me. And you know, that thinking almost killed me, because there's a lot of people just like me. As a matter of fact, most people in these rooms are exactly like me. Because again, it says that you know, our alcohol was but a symptom. The underlying issues that we all have are the same. And people, you know, it doesn't matter if they're gamblers, it doesn't matter if they're overeaters, you know, pill poppers, heroin shooters. We all use in different programs, though, and it's better if you identify in your different programs, but we all use the same 12 steps to recover. All of us, right? They found that this works for all people. So I've had people that have snuck into Code Blue and introduced themselves as alcoholics, and at the end say, hey man, you know, I'm an overeater, or hey man, I'm a gambler, or hey man, and it's like, and they say, hey, this really worked well for me, because they just did what the book says, even if they didn't identify with the first part, you know, which is of course step 1. So this program works for everybody. I had one woman that took it, and she said, you know what, I'm not an ick anything. It's just, she said, my life was falling apart and I didn't know what to do. I came in here and I did the work, and things got better. So, but you know, most people, we have to be pretty desperate before we're going to be willing to do the work in this book. So that's unfortunate, but that's true. So we're going to highlight the first 3 lines. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Okay. So next to that, we're going to write sponsoring others. Sponsoring others. And again, I'll probably be going too fast for you tonight, so I apologize, but we got a lot to get through. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Circle 12th suggestion. Okay? Now, you don't need to write this, but you circled it and you're going to remember this, right? People come in here and they want to hide behind that word suggestion. They say, hey man, it's only suggested, we don't have to do it. Well, you know what you tell them? You say, well, that may be true, but these are the only suggestions we have, right? So if you don't do these, there's nothing else that we've got for you. You know, this is what it is. Carry this message to other alcoholics. Highlight the next 3 lines. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Okay, so we highlighted that, and again, that's because it is the program of identification. So we're going to write something next to that. Write, carry the message, not the alcoholic. Right? We're not going to be enablers. Carry the message, not the alcoholic. And I'll talk a little bit about what I did trying to carry somebody and it didn't work. So carry the message, not the alcoholic. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. Highlight just the little line there, like 7 words. This is an experience you must not miss, and circle must. So right above the line we just highlighted, write promise. That's a promise. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you. That is a promise. We know you will not miss it. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. So next to that, write, greet all newcomers. Greet all newcomers. I mean, we all go to meetings, and we have our meetings that we go to, and we know people that show up. And we know when somebody arrives and we don't know them, we particularly want to go up to that person. We want to shake their hand. We want to welcome them. If they'll take a hug, we'll give them a hug. So we greet all newcomers and make sure that they know that they're welcome. And when I got out of detox and I went into the New Hope Alano, a meeting of 50 people, maybe 15 came up to me after the meeting and greeted me and made me feel welcome. And I was like, how do all these people know that I'm fresh fish? What's going on? Well, because they've never seen me before is why, and they go there every week. So we greet, and I was like, wow, these people, this is kind of cool. I think I'll come back. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. So next to that, I guess we can write detox, jails, treatment centers, and meetings are some of the places today. Bill and Bob, they went anywhere, right? They went to Skid Row, they went to hospitals. But we've got detox, jails, treatment centers, and meetings. That's where we can find our prospects. Mainly we do it at meetings if people are lucky enough to walk in. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. Highlight 3 lines. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. Right? So that again is what we wrote at the top of the page. It's a program of identification. That's what makes us uniquely qualified. Now, at the bottom of the page, we're going to write, when we all come in, we think we are unique. When we all come in, we think we are unique. Just that little phrase, when we all come in, we think we are unique. I heard another fella here, John, he says he almost died of terminal uniqueness, right? It's not going to work for me. So cooperate, never criticize. Underline that last sentence. To be helpful is our only aim. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. Highlight the next sentence. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. Right? And then highlight the next line. You may spoil a later opportunity. So next to the first line, if he does not want to stop drinking, at the top, draw an arrow and just write, ask him or her, of course, do you want to stop? Question mark. We're just going to come out and say it. Do you want to stop? Right? Now, if just until the heat is on now, and I'm not sure, we've got to find somebody who is at the point where they've got the gift of desperation and they really, really want to stop. Now, on the left to what we just highlighted, you can write, okay to tell war stories when on a 12-step call. Okay to tell war stories when on a 12-step call. And again, it all comes down to that, to the identification that we want people to feel.
What's a 12-step call?
Well, I mean, there's somebody that wants you to come over and talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, or maybe you could even be going into a detox center. I would consider that a 12-step call. But it's mainly when you go over to somebody's house and they want to listen a little bit to what you have to say. This advice is given for his family also. And a lot of 12-step calls I've got, where like the wife might call and you get over there and the husband doesn't know anything about it and he's not willing to listen, then you leave. I mean, there's nothing, But if somebody knows you're coming and they're willing to listen, then it's okay. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. Oh, this advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. So right underneath where we wrote, okay to tell war stories, went on a 12-step call. Right under that, write, be honest. Tell person will take a lot of action. Right? If they're listening, right, and they're interested, be honest. Tell person it'll take a lot of action if they want to go through with this. Right? We want to be honest from the outset. It's like, hey man, this is, there's a lot of work that I did. I did a lot of work to get better. I was like you. You can hear that in my stories. My life is completely different today, right? And it'll talk a little bit more about that as we read further. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Highlight the next sentence. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Just that little sentence. Okay? Then let his family or a friend, put a 1 in front of ask. Ask him if he wants to quit for good. And put a 2 in front of if again, if he would go to any extreme to do so. So next to the 1 and 2 to the left, we're going to write 2 qualifiers. Right? So somebody's out there, what do you think we did at the beginning of Code Blue? This is what my sponsor had me do. Are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol and drugs? Sign it and date it, right? That's what we do with people who are going to work. But we're going to have to qualify them before we start working with them. And that's why we tell them that it's going to be a lot of work. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. There's that word again, recovered. We can recover from the disease, right? When I used to say, I'm John, I'm a recovering alcoholic, you know what that meant to me? I said that meant that I hadn't done the steps, and that means when I cheat on my taxes and when I lie at work and I do this, I'm only recovering, right? I can get away with this stuff. When we've done the steps, we're recovered and we've got no excuses for our behavior, right? We're recovered people and we have to live by these principles, right? You should be described to him, circle one as one of a fellowship, just the one of a fellowship, who as a part of their own recovery try to help others and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you, right? So we got to let him know, hey, this is part of my recovery. Underline the next sentence. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him, right? We can't do that. Never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters. I mean, I've had, it's always the wife or the girlfriend. You got to help this guy. You got to help him. Come on over. I'll drag him to talk with you. Usually, that person has no willingness whatsoever. I run into a brick wall. So I mean, we'll find out pretty quickly if this person, by asking these 2 qualifiers, do you really want to quit drinking? Okay, are you willing to do anything to quit drinking? Right? And if we get a double yes on that, then we're good to go. So at the bottom of page 90, we're going to write something. We're going to write, we are in a fellowship. We work a program. right? We are in a fellowship. We work a program. And goodness me, I don't know, from 1989, maybe for almost 20 years, I was a member of the fellowship, and I could get, 1 month, maybe 2 months, and then I would drink again. And this went on for 20 years when I just used the fellowship, but I did not work the program. So you don't need to write this, but just some of the things, what do? We go to meetings, we do the steps, we sponsor others, we go to detox centers, we go to treatment centers, we can show up early and set up chairs, we can answer phones, we can make coffee, you can be a general service rep, you can be a trusted servant, and if you go to a meeting, take a topic, take a step, man. We can get involved in so many different ways, right? Working the I remember when I wasn't working the steps and we used to go around the room and talking about steps. I remember how I used to make stuff up, or I'd say, well, I'm not afraid of doing that step when I get there, but I never did a damn thing, right? And I always drank. The family must decide these things are over. Next one. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. Again, we meet people mainly at meetings when they come into the meetings. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution. Today more and more people, they get kind of sentenced to AA, or the doctor recommends to come here, and sometimes the judge sentences people, of course, with DWIs. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. Okay, so earlier I talked about not trying to 12-step somebody when they're drunk. That generally doesn't work, although Ebby Thatcher did meet Bill Wilson when Bill was drunk that first time. Little known story, though, Ebby came back a few days later with another guy from the Oxford group to talk to Bill again. Now, when we are on 12-step calls, and this is going to look like a contradiction, but it's not. Next to that line we just underlined, you can write 2 people. Right, so we're going out there and we're calling on somebody. Okay, when you're going on a 12, today you want to have another person with you, right? Now this is later what I'm about to read, right? See your man alone if possible, right? That'll be a little bit later. But on 12-step calls, I really like some backup with me. If you're going over to somebody's house, you don't know them, right? At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Highlight the next 3 lines. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. So next to that sentence, we're going to write brief war stories. Those are brief war stories. Okay. And then right underneath where we wrote brief war stories, write something else. We're going to write 4 moods. 4 moods. Qualifying yourself as just as bad, not unique. 4 moods, qualifying yourself as just as bad, not unique. And we're going to number the 4 moods. Right? I'm a salesman, right? So we try to mirror people when I'm selling to somebody. Back in the day when you could smoke in stores, I'm that old. The regional manager said, "You keep some cigarettes in a pipe handy because if your customers are smoking, you whip that out and you start smoking. If they're talking about sports, you know about the sports." He said, "You've got to kind of mirror your customers so that you're more like them, and you'll be able to get in more." And that's exactly what we do with this program of identification. So him to speak of himself, put a 1 in front of if. That's the first mood. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. Okay? Put a 2 in front of the next if. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. Put a 3 in front of the next if. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. And then a 4 in front of the if again. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. Right? So again, we're just trying to establish the identification. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were. Just tell him the truth. How you finally learned that you were sick. Highlight the next sentence. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. So next to that, we're going to write what it was like. Okay, and that's the sentence above it too, that you were sick. So what it was like, and that's both when we're speaking and when we're trying to help a newcomer. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. Now that's why we go through this book with our sponsees, so that with steps 1 and 2 are like the first 89 pages, counting or something like that, counting the forewords and the prefaces, right, are all steps 1 and 2 to get people to understand that we've got that mental blank spot. We've got that step 1. We got to get that down. As we have done in chapter 9. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. I mean, I like, Eric, who was here talking on the 4th step. I love his story about how he quit drinking for good. He quit for good because of all of the pain and agony it was causing him, right? And he woke up the morning and he said, I'm never drinking again. Well, at 5:30 that evening, he was on his porch and he was on his second drink before he remembered that he had quit for good. I mean, it's crazy, right? And I mean, there's so, I mean, we can go on and on with those, right? If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, right? So, I mean, they're going to convince us, right? I want to hear about you. I want to know that you're a real alcoholic, right? Begin to dwell on the hopeless, circle hopeless, on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower, right? Remember the obsession of the mind. How that overcomes all ideas to the contrary and tells us it's okay to take that first drink, right? No matter, we might have got out of jail that morning, right? And the mind, that the obsessions, we forget all that and it says it's okay. Take the drink. It's going to be different. You deserve it, right? So let's highlight the next 4 lines. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write, this is my sponsor. He said this has happened to him. He said he will get the book, try it himself or herself, and say it doesn't work. Right? He will get the book, try it themselves, and say it doesn't work. And that was true for me to some extent. I mean, I can't say I really tried it, but I got the book and I kind of read through it. And I said, this is ridiculous. I didn't even give it a chance. But they'll try it himself and say it doesn't work. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can, if he is not too alcoholic. But insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. After himself, we're going to write beyond human aid. Right? Once we're beyond human aid, the meetings are going to work for a little while, but we're going to need something greater than that. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of the body and mind which accompany it. Right? And that's why we go through the doctor's opinion. Right? Because everybody has been told their whole life, you're sinful, you have weak willpower. Why can't you pull yourself together, damn it? Right? So we're going to let them know that this is a fatal disease, right? It's an illness. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Highlight the next sentence. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. I mean, we read about deaths in the paper every day. Doctors, I mean, the only real bottom is when you're dead, right? Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness, circle hopelessness again, of alcoholism, underline, because you offer a solution. So off to the left, we're going to write, reflect on hopelessness, obsess about it. So, I'm sorry, talk about hopelessness, the obsession, and the allergy. Right? The hopelessness, so the obsession, right? Which because we're stone cold sober when we pick up that first drink. And then the allergy, which is once we start drinking, we can't control what we take. So we're going to reflect on the hopelessness, the obsession, and the allergy. And that's the doctor's opinion and Bill's story for that matter too. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit. I saw Bill Wilson, and I don't know where it was, but it was on film. And Bill, he was like this. He says, when I approach a man, he said, in one hand, I have the hopelessness, right? And he says, as soon as he hears that message, in the other hand, I give him hope. So Bill's given hopelessness with one hand and hope with the other, right? Because again, if we don't have step one, we can't do step two. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is an alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Right? I mean, that interested me. I saw these people, and I was like, well, what the hell? I don't think those guys are really sober. There's no way they're sober. I can't believe it, right? Let him ask you that question if he will. So let's highlight the next 4 lines. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. So next to that, we're going to write what happened. Right? So earlier we had what it was like, and now we've got what happened. Right? And that's what we do when we speak. And remember, next to your own conception of God, let's write Ebby Thatcher, 12-stepping Bill. That's cool. Yep. Ebby Thatcher, 12-stepping Bill. Right? And I know Bill was drunk, but that's where Ebby Thatcher, they were going back and forth, and Bill was really angry, and Ebby got tired, and he finally said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Right? That's when it moved from a religious message which says this is how you must believe to a spiritual message which says it doesn't matter. Simply, are you willing to believe? He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. And again, we're going to highlight the squiggly writing. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles. So after that, we're going to write second step. Second step. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions, about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. So next to that, we're going to write, slow wake up, your own conception of God. Slow wake up, your own conception of God. Because, people read Bill's story and they're like, what, they look at the white light experience, and that's not going to happen to most of us. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. Okay, so we're going to highlight the next 2, 4, 6, 7 lines. And we're going to circle the musts. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. Circle action as well. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion, admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. So stop highlighting there, and to the right we're going to write, don't force religion on anyone. Don't force religion on anyone. I once went through treatment by a guy, the guy running it was outpatient treatment. The guy running it was an ex-priest, right? And he tried everything to quit alcohol, and he couldn't do it until he went through these very steps that we're doing and chose his own conception of God, not the Catholic conception. At the bottom of the page, we're going to write, self-knowledge doesn't work. Self-knowledge doesn't work. And then you can write page 39. Okay? And that's however deep his faith and knowledge, what we highlighted, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Self-knowledge doesn't work, page 39. You guys don't need to go there, but I'm just going to read it. But the actual, we've got it highlighted, but the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. So we know that we shouldn't drink. We know when we drink bad things happen. We know when we start we can't stop. And yet that knowledge avails us nothing. We represent no particular faith or denomination. Top of the page, we're going to write organized religion. You can go REL period, is an outside issue. Organized religion is an outside issue. You know, and that's one of our traditions, and there are some real sticklers in here about outside issues. I get up there, we're Alcoholics Anonymous, but when I tell my story, I gotta tell you that I'm also a drug addict and a compulsive gambler because it's part of my story. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. Outline the program of action. Circle that. Circle program of action. In the margin above it, write steps, not meetings. The program of action is working the steps with another human being. It's not going to meetings. Going to meetings is vitally important. The fellowship is a great power we need, but the program of action are the steps. Right? That's what we read at the outset of every meeting, the 12 steps. Explaining how you made a self-appraisal. Next to that, write 4. How you step 4. How you straightened out your past. Write step 9. And why you are now endeavoring to be helpful to him. Somewhere in there, write step 12. And then right next to that, we're going to write what it's like now, right? So that's what we do when we work with people, and that's also what we do when we tell our story. What it was like, what happened, and what we're like now, and that's what he's telling us to do right here in the book.
Would you repeat the 3 circles that we had? 1, 2, 3, 4 steps of them.
Which ones now?
She's asking you to restate the steps, that the 4th and 9th.
How we made a self-appraisal, that's step 4.
Okay.
How we straightened out your past, that's step 9. Right? We went out and made our amends, and we cleaned up our mess. And why you are now endeavoring to be helpful, that's step 12.
Okay.
Highlight the next 3 lines. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. I got to tell you guys, one of the reasons I would not accept help or ask for help is I'm not going to inconvenience these people with my little problems, even though I'm dying, right? They don't want to hear me, what's going on. That's ridiculous. These guys have lives. They've got things going on with their wives and their kids and their job. They don't want to spend time with me. I'm not going to bother them. So we've really got to let them know that, no, this is vital to my recovery, that we meet every week and we do this, right? We got to let them know that. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Highlight the next 5 lines. Make it plain he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. right? You come into these rooms and we're asked to give up the two things that are nearest and dearest to us. One is our alcohol and the other is our self-centeredness and our selfishness, right? And they're asking us to give both of those up. So next to what we just highlighted, you can write work with others after 4 months. And I'm going to put a qualifier on that. Work with others after 4 months. And the only reason I'm saying that is because if you go through, like with the Code Blue method, it's about 4 months to get through the recovery section and to do these steps. But we got to remember that Bill Wilson, or Ebby Thatcher went to Bill Wilson after 1 month. Bill Wilson was running around New York with a matter of weeks trying to help people. He didn't succeed. He got to Dr. Bob after 6 months, and Dr. Bob got to Bill Dotson after 10 days. Right? So I think that you can start trying to help people when you think you've got something to offer. And, you know, maybe, and I'm not talking about giving people rides and stuff like that. I'm actually talking about taking them through the work, right? So my sponsor said, once you have done the steps, and you've got up to step 9 and you've made 2 amends, you're ready to start raising your hand, right? You haven't done 10, 11, 12, right? Once you've made 2 amends in step 9, he said, raise your hand and take people through the book, right? And then we're going to learn about 10, 11, and 12 as we go on. Let's see here. Ahead of his own. Make it clear he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. Right? People, that's very important. People think, oh my God, you know, I can't go to that meeting because I blew John Henry off as a sponsor. I can't. No, you know, it doesn't bother me at all. Hopefully you're going to find somebody that you click with better. I want you to keep coming to these meetings if they help you. So it is no big deal. That's why they call it a temporary sponsor, man. Highlight the next 3, or did I do that? The next 3 lines. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. Right? It's no big deal. Yeah, and I'll be quite honest, in some cases it's like, oh, thank God, because I don't have the time, you know, but if he does want to work, he'll make the time. Underline the next 2 lines again. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. Underlined at the end of the paragraph. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. Right? So next to that, write the word action. Just write the word action. Because that's what these suggestions are. They're actions. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all of the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning. Okay, so we're going to write next to that, we're going to write 4, 5, 8, and 9. The drastic house cleaning. 4, 5, 8, and 9. Which requires discussion with other people. Right? So that's both when you're talking step 5 to your sponsor and when you're going out and cleaning up your mess in step 9. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. Circle action. And that's why, I mean, you know what? People are sick of hearing me talk about doing the steps, about taking action. But when people go out and start drinking again and they say AA doesn't work, I want them to know that they didn't do the program of action, right? They just tried the fellowship. And that's why they're out there getting drunk. So I'd rather have them out there drinking on the truth than saying that AA crap doesn't work for me. Because for 20 years I said AA doesn't work for me, but I didn't understand the difference between going to meetings and doing the work. I didn't get that. On your first visit, tell him about the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of this book. Right? So, you know, what it's talking about here, you know, why you don't need to follow all of the program. I think it was 97 or 98. I went through a 30-day inpatient. I did 3 months at Progress Valley. Then I did 6 months in Catholic Charities, right? And I moved in with a sober guy. Now, through all of that, I never worked the steps. So it never occurred to me to work with others, right? Because I didn't have a sponsor and I didn't have God as my director, right? So I remember I think I got a shiny 1-year chip, right? But I'm still out there lying, cheating, when in my salesman thing, trying to, treating women poorly. I'm doing all these things. So my shiny 1-year medallion meant crap. It didn't mean a damn thing, right? Because I did not do the work and I was still the same person, and I was angry, I was restless, irritable, discontent, and shortly after that, when I moved out of the sober living, what do you think happened? I relapsed, right? So that meant nothing because I didn't do the work. But I used living in all this structured environment for a long time to not drink, right? So I didn't drink, but I didn't get well. Top of the next page, we're going to write desperation equals willingness. And again, I told you how at 6 months sober I was thinking about killing myself. And that's when I hung around long enough where I finally listened to somebody and I finally made a decision to do the work. Desperation equals willingness. Hopelessness equals teachability. Right? When you're desperate and you're hopeless, yeah, you're going to be more receptive. And it's unfortunate that most of us have to get pretty badly mangled before we reach that point. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he is likely to say you rushed him. Right? So that's kind of a tricky area there. We're going to go ahead and highlight to the end of the paragraph. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Never, circle that never, and write very few nevers in book. We're going to get that one and I think one on the next page. There's very few of them. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Next to that, write 12 steps. And keep highlighting to the end of the paragraph. Show him how they worked with you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, there it is. Not stop drinking, but get well. If he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. And underline anything, right? So off to the left, we're going to write something again. We're going to write first approach. First approach. Only tell them what I have done. Don't tell them what to do. First approach, only tell them what I have done. Don't tell them what to do. Right? So we're going to say, hey man, that's what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And this is what I did. Right? So first approach, only tell them what I have done. Don't tell them what to do. Right? Now, I'm not saying that might not change later, depending on the relationship that you develop. Some people are like, hey man, I need some more guidance. You got to give me some definite things, and you know what? If that's the case, then absolutely, I'm gonna say, yeah, this, I recommend that you do this, right? I mean, a sponsor-sponsee relationship is. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, they can walk away anytime, that darn sponsors had got me doing this and that. It's just horrible, right? But they're willing. It's they're doing it. We're not forcing them, right? So we're going to highlight the next paragraph as well. Did we, next to the kit of spiritual tools, we wrote 12 steps, right? Okay. If he is not interested in your solution, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties or a nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. Right? I mean, when we go out there, I've had people come back and say, this time I promise I'll go through with the work. Right? If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. After doing that, highlight to the end of the paragraph, he must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. Right? So you can write, can't be forced on him. Can't be forced on him. That's why you guys remember that God is an exercise. That one worked for me. It was unbelievable when he ripped it off and he gave me the God is, the good stuff, and said that you can start asking this God for help, and we're going to crumple up that other God isn't and throw it in the garbage. Right? That was the God of justice. That went in the garbage, and it was the God of love that he had me go to. If he thinks he can do the job in some way or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. Highlight the next sentence. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that worked with us. Now, when this book was written, Bill's talking about the first 100 people, but today we're talking about millions. Millions. This simple program has worked for millions of people. Right? And again, when I go back to that doggone risky drinking thing that I watched on HBO, where they try to have people control their drinking while drinking, I think that's completely absurd. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. So we're going to write something at the bottom of the page. Give your number, right? When you're at a meeting, it's like, here's my number, but guess what? Give your number / take their number, right? Because come on, man, people gave me their number all the time, and I never called anybody. The 10,000-pound telephone, I crumpled it up, threw it away. So give your number, take their number. When somebody took my number and they called me, I was dumbstruck. And I thought, wow. And they would get me back to a meeting or to some event. We're going to keep writing. Call them twice. So my sponsor, and these are just some suggestions, right? If your sponsor has something else, tells you something else to do, then he's right or she's right and I'm wrong. But he said you call them maybe in the next day or two, and then you call them maybe 3 days after that. And then, he said call them twice, but he said keep your number, maybe give them a call in a month from now. I've got one guy that I had to drop him as a sponsor because he didn't want to do the work. And I call him or I text him every couple of months just to see, and he hasn't responded. But I know he's out there and he's probably using, so I just want him to know that anytime he wants to come back in, that I'm going to be here for him. Let's see here. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. Okay. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Right? I mean, a lot, you're working with people, I tell you what, the vast majority of them probably aren't going to be willing to do the work. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate, there it is, desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Underline the next sentence. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. Right? And I had one guy, and I picked him up and drove him to a meeting almost every night. And, I wasn't particularly working the steps myself, but I was trying. And, this guy just had to get the card signed. And as soon as he was done with his DWI case, he kind of vanished. And knowing what I know now, I would have kind of realized that he was unwilling. So next to that, we're going to write, don't waste time. Don't waste time. And if you're not sure whether you're wasting time or not, guess what? You're going to call your sponsor. If your sponsor doesn't know, have them call their sponsor. We're going to get an answer. We're not just going to drop somebody. We're going to discuss it with somebody and say, well, and without giving up anybody's name or anything, we're going to say, well, this is what's going on. Do you think I should continue working with this person? And a lot of times I'm like, well, are we going to meet and get started on your 4th step? Are we going to do that? And if the answer is no, then there's nothing I can... Hey, that's the only trick I got. If you're not willing to go through the steps, there's not much I can do for you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. We've only got so much time in the day. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. One of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half dozen prospects. He often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. So next to that, we're going to write Bill W. Bill W. Suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read the volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. That's like a dream. It's somebody, yeah, man, I'm ready to go, let's do it. Right? They usually don't say that. What they usually say is, okay, I suppose we'll, but that's good enough for me. I'm going to take that. If they say yes. So highlight the next sentence. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Just that sentence. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision. Put 3 above that. Whenever I give you numbers like that, they're usually the steps. So that's 3. And to tell his story above that, write 5. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. Right? And we use the word sponsor bandied about. I don't think it's anywhere in the big book. But I know when I've heard recordings of Bill Wilson, he always said Ebby Thatcher was a sponsor, and Ebby Thatcher took him through the steps in the town hospital, right? I think in one, I forget where in the book it is, but somewhere in the book it says, a closed-mouthed individual. And that's very important, too, that we find a closed-mouthed individual, because we don't want anybody going around and sharing our stuff. I've never seen this myself, but I've had people tell me stories about how, they got this person and they're telling them, and all of a sudden they go to a meeting and everybody else knows their business, right? So we want a closed-mouthed individual. Now, if they do want to go to somebody else again, hey, that's just fine. All I want is for you to get better. He may be broken homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. So I think my second sponsee, a young fella, I got him a job at the tile shop, right? He came in. We needed a warehouse guy real bad, so I brought him over there. We hired him the same day because we were desperate, right? The very next day, the HR guy came running out of there and he said, who the hell hired this guy? He's got felonies. What the hell's going on here, right? And my boss, what he does, he points right at me and goes, he did. And Ollie, the HR guy, said, do you vouch for him? And I said, I do. And he said, that's all I need. Today, this guy, that was 3 years ago, he became a warehouse manager, and now he's got a great job working in our office at our corporate headquarters. So that was wonderful, man. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have, right? That's going to give them a little assistance there. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days. That other Eric who came and talked here, he lost because of cancer, he lost his job and he lost his house. And of course me, I'm like, yeah, well, if you need to move in and stay with me for a few days, that's okay. Of course, everybody's always said, no, that's okay. He goes, yes, yeah. So next thing I know, he's got his furniture moved in, and he stays with me 2 weeks out of each month, and I love having the guy there. And because of his circumstances, I don't want any money. I mean, I love having him there, and I love being able to help him. So I did both of those things, and it's pretty cool. But be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that and you only harm him. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than his recovery. After that, right, don't deprive him of his bottom. And the only reason I have him and he in here is because I'm a guy, and men, a woman, you write her or she. So don't deprive him of his bottom. And I guess a little earlier, about bringing people into your home. My second sponsor, the one that really kind of got me through this, he let somebody into his house with his girlfriend's permission, and his girlfriend got raped, right? So by this guy. So we've got to be careful, right? I mean, we've got to be really careful, with what we're doing. We want to help people. We don't want to be afraid. But I mean, that was obviously a horrible thing that happened. So we did write. Did we write? Don't deprive him of his bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I mean, that same guy was a huge advocate. He said we do not want to enable people. We want them to hit bottom, and we want them to hit it hard, because that's the only way most of us are going to be willing to do this work, right? Here's another never, underline it. Never avoid these responsibilities. But be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Okay, so we're gonna highlight the next 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. There's another foundation stone, the 12th step. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. So from helping others to the 10 lines down. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to be the Good Samaritan every day if need be. Next to that, right, live the program. Okay? Live the program. Next to you have to be the Good Samaritan every day if be. That's what it means, that we live the program. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money, your home, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the night. You can stop highlighting there. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. Eric hasn't done that, thank goodness. You may have to fight with him if he is violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. Okay, so on the left side of that whole paragraph, we're going to write love thy neighbor. That whole paragraph, love thy neighbor. And on the right side, we're going to write price of sobriety. Price of sobriety. Love thy neighbor on one side and price of sobriety on the other. Right? So yeah, I mean, I get calls, it's, I'm watching the football. You know what? We take the doggone call, right? We take the call. Or we got to go somewhere, we do it. Right? That's what we do. So where it says, at the bottom of that paragraph, somewhere it says sedatives. Okay, so just at the bottom of that paragraph, write detox. Detox. What we're going to do, man, I mean, you know what? I've never administered sedatives. I don't have any sedatives. I don't even really know what they are. I took a lot of Vicodin. I took a lot of OxyContin, but I don't know what they mean here. So we're gonna get people to detox. And a friend of mine called detox, and what do they call the EMTs or something? They got there, and the guy was drunk, and the EMT was just pissed off. God, another one, right? I mean, it was even worse back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. But you know what? Big deal. The guy was in danger, and we got him to detox, and he got better. So I don't care. If we got to call an ambulance, we're gonna get the person to detox. That's what we do. And thank heavens that they've got detox centers that will accept people. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long time. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications in the family. So, with Eric, I'm a single guy, so there's no big deal, and there's no complications with him having there, and he needs a place to live, so he doesn't apply. But for a lot of people, and particularly if you've got a family, we've got to let them fly away, right? We can't have them there for a long time. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. Next to that paragraph, off to the right, write, direct them to Al-Anon. Right? So, I mean, a lot of people at work who have alcoholics or pill poppers or even gamblers or whatever in their family, I'm like, look, man, you got to go to Al-Anon because you're sick too. This is affecting you, and you need help as well. Plus, you also need to learn how to handle these people, what to do, and they teach all of you at Al-Anon. And I think the success rate I have for getting people to Al-Anon is very, very minimal. For some reason, it's like I'm not the sick person. I don't need to do it. They're the ones, right? But the family members, it's a family disease, man. Everybody's sick, and we all need help. So you got to try to direct them to Al-Anon. And I'm going back to that risky drinking thing, that HBO documentary. There was one wife of this alcoholic. This guy was I mean, it was just like me, which when in the midst of my addiction, which was disgusting, right? That's the way I was too. But his wife, and they were separated. He said, "You got therapy." She said, "There's no therapy for idiots like me who put up with your bullshit," right? And that's not true. Nobody told her about Al-Anon. So she was so sick, and you could see that in the documentary. And nobody told her to go to Al-Anon. It was breaking my heart. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. Man, you get somebody that's raring to go, it's like a dream come true for you. Highlight the next sentence. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. Okay, that's a big one. So next to that, we're going to write work on alcoholism first, then other problems. Work on alcoholism first, then other problems. Work on alcoholism first, then other problems. I 9 or 10 treatments for me, and I would get out, and the first thing I'd say, "Oh my God, I'm broke. I'm a worthless person. I got no money. I got to go back to work." And I would go back, and I would be sober. I'd be working like a son of a bitch, and I would never do any of this work or work on my recovery. I always had to have money, and because I was worthless without money, people were going to look down on me, right? And I always relapsed. So we've got to work on our alcoholism. And I tell people, and I know how hard it is for people to understand that, but I try to get this through to people, but all my sponsees, they want to get to work right away to pay their bills, right? But if you don't recover, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're going to lose it all anyway. You're going to lose everything. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. Okay, highlight to the end of the paragraph. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. That was me. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking as long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. All right? I mean, my dad, when he was alive, used to bail me out, man. Bailed me out with the IRS. Thousands of dollars. Always bailed me out. And he didn't know, but he was enabling me, and it wasn't helping me. He should have let me crash and burn. Highlight the next 3 lines. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trust in God. Above that, write 2 and 3. And clean house. Above that, write 4 through 9. Trust in God, 2 and 3. Clean house, 4 through 9. I was going to say something, but I forgot it. That's okay. Now the domestic problem. You know what? We're going to write something off to the left first. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. And sometimes it's the shirt on your back, and that's it. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. Now the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. Highlight the next 5 lines. When your prospect has made such reparation as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put those principles into action at home. And underline that in addition. Right? Remember, we said somewhere earlier in this thing that practicing the principles at home and at work is the harder part. Right? It's so easy for us, even if we go to a meeting every day, it's really easy to be practice these principles for 1 hour a day. Right? We got to do them all day. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should not concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Just underline this one sentence. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. Right? That's going to kill us. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover they have a basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. Highlight the next 6 lines. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times. Stop highlighting there. That's almost impossible, right? I mean, to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. I find today, though, that after having worked these steps and trying to live by them, because I going through these steps with you guys and going through it with other sponsors sponsees keeps me on the right track. I am so much better than I used to be. Stuff that used to throw me off the deep end into blind raging anger it doesn't affect me like that anymore. That's how I know that I've changed, because the stuff that I used to I used to go off the deep end. It's like today I'm like, that guy must be having a hard day. And I mean, and some days are better than others. It depends on how my relationship with God is, and if my instincts are under control. But in most times, I can say that man is spiritually sick or that woman is spiritually sick, and when we say a prayer for him, then our resentment goes away. But again, of course, we all fall much below this standard many times. I certainly do. But we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. Right? So when we do have these steps where if something does happen, we clean it up right away. We clean it up right away so we don't have to take it with us. We don't have to carry that guilt and shame anymore. If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. Underline just this one sentence. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Again, next to that, we're going to write recovery comes first. Recovery comes first. Right? We alcoholics are the most impatient people in the world. We get out of a 30-day treatment center and we want our job to be perfect. We want our family to be perfect. We want to get everything fixed right away, and that's not going to happen, man. This is a lifetime deal, and we have to be patient. And golly, what are the 3 things? It'll come to me before the end of the meeting. Sometimes it is to the best interests. I'm so tired tonight, my brain isn't working straight. Sometimes it is to the best interests of all concerned that a couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. So next to that, off to the right, write don't dictate. Don't dictate. And then we're going to highlight the next 2 lines. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. Right? I mean, we're doing that. We've got a recovery's got to come first, man. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Again, Eric sobered up and ended up getting divorced, right? Highlight, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. Stop highlighting there. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. Both you and the new man must walk day by day the path of spiritual progress. I'm sorry, we got to highlight that and the next sentence. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. Okay, so we're going to write shoulder to shoulder next to that. And then next to remarkable things, we're going to write promise. Promise. So we're talking about shoulder to shoulder. We used to be loners. That's a promise. Remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves, highlight to planned, in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. And then next to that little sentence, write every time. Every time. And that's talking about putting ourselves in God's hands. And we're gonna go out there and take some risks, and we're out there doing the right thing and trusting in God, right? And we're never going to see if God works or not if we don't go out there and we don't try it. We're living by these principles. Oh my God, if I do this really bad thing is going to happen to me, but it's eating me up with guilt and shame and remorse. We go out and we trust and we do the right thing and we see what happens, right? But we do talk to our sponsors before we do, and other people before we do stupid stuff. Follow the dictates of a higher power and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. After that, write promise. It's another promise. Then we're going to highlight the next 2 lines. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. Right? I've had people try to drag me in. You stay out of it, right? Don't take sides. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character, underlying defects of character, are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember when they are impatient the blessed fact of his sobriety. Underline the next 3 lines. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. Okay, so next to that we're going to write, give advice only if you have experience. Right? Give advice only if you have experience. So I've got somebody, John, this is going on with my wife and kids, and and I'm like, yep, hold the phone there. I'm a single guy. I really don't know what to do. However, guess what? I know Eric over here, and Eric was just in your situation, so I'm going to have you go talk to him. Right? I used to give people advice on everything, whether I knew what to say or not, right? Because I knew everything, right? I knew everything. Today I realize if I haven't experienced it, I had better not tell somebody what to do. But I can find them somebody in this program. We've got our sponsor. We've got sponsor chains. We've got a network of wonderful people who love to help. And we're going to find somebody that can give you, that's going through what you're going through. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Underline the next 2 lines. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. Man, I'm doing stuff that I'm not supposed to be able to do, guys, I tell you. The way that I was and what I'm able to do now with God's help, it's quite remarkable. People have said we must, circle must, not go where liquor is served. We're going to circle all the musts here. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Okay, so next to that we're going to write BS. Just write BS. Now, if somebody's newly sober, am I going to say, let's go into this bar or no. But once I've worked the steps, I have no problem going into places where I need to go if I've got a reason to be there. And, when I wasn't working these steps, I used to see a beer, coming out of the fridge, sweating on TV, or I'd even be reading in a novel and my mouth would start to water. Now it does not bother me at all. So once we've recovered, we can do these things. Right now, when you're newly sober, I'm going to say we better be careful. Highlight the next 3 lines. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind, which is somebody newly sober that hasn't worked the steps. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. Okay? The only chance for sobriety would be some place like the Greenland Ice Cap, And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. I love that line. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. There was a fellow, he was an announcer, I think he was a football announcer, and he got addicted to crack and he lost everything and he crashed and burned. He had several relapses and several treatments. He locked himself away in an apartment for 1 year, right? He locked himself and stayed away from everything. And he said, I remember the interview. I got a year sober and I'm going to go out. I stayed away from everything. Well, the guy went out into the world. He hadn't done the work and he relapsed right away, right? In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed, underline doomed, to failure. So we just by staying away from it, if we don't change, I don't care. We don't change. It might be 30 days, might be 3 years, might be 30. We don't change. We're going to drink. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. We're going to highlight the next 4 lines. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. This includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, and even, of course, the ordinary whoopee parties, right? Those two. And again, I talked about at my sister's wedding when everybody was drinking and the normies in our family were drinking and getting drunk, and I'm up there having a great time, dancing and everything else. The 2 other alcoholics, whenever they're around family, they can't drink because it's not allowed. Those guys were miserable, right? Sitting down there watching everybody else drink. I was up dancing, having a wonderful time. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we have made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, highlight, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Right? You don't need to write this down, but Bill only talks about motives a couple of times, our motives, right? Right here, if we have a reason for going to these places, and earlier on step 4, if we're going to jump into bed with somebody, right? In the sex inventory. So what he's saying is we do not live by motives. Everybody in AA, they say check your motives, right? No, man, because my motives are wrong most of the time, right? What I do is I live by the principles of the program. If I live by these principles, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get in trouble. But when I live by my motives, I am in danger, right? For going to this place where I'm expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places. Good, we're almost done. If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. Highlight the next 7 lines to the end of the paragraph. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Right? Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. So do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Next to that, right, self-seeking. Self-seeking, right? We try not to do that anymore. Think what we can bring to it, right? What can we bring instead of what can we take? Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? My 2 brothers at Paula's wedding. If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you are a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Underline the next sentence. Let your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. You want to bring wine over to my house when I host Thanksgiving, you bring it on over. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. That's my brother living in the basement. Now you are getting back into the social life of this, and it was me too. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. Highlight the next 3 lines. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others, so never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. Okay, so right at the beginning where it says your job now, underline now, and off to the left, write not later, right? Now. The time is now. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Highlight the next 2 lines. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. So next to that, we're going to write, stay in the program of action. Stay in the program of action. Right? You know, our spiritual barometer isn't, you know, how we're feeling. It's what are we doing? Remember in steps 10 and 11, it says that your spirituality it's based on the maintenance of your spirituality, the things that we do on a daily basis, right? We're all going to have bad days. We're all going to feel lousy. We're going to sometimes feel depressed. But our actions, right? The actions we have to stay in principle with these 12 principles, and we're going to be okay. You know, at the end of the day, they're not going to remember that John felt depressed or bad that day. They're going to remember what John did. What did John do that day? Many of us keep liquor in our homes. I don't. We often need it to carry green recruits through a severe hangover. I get them to detox. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are not alcoholic. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. Underline the next sentence. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for the Spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. And when I quit smoking, I became a crusader against, and nobody liked to listen to that either. Someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem. Underlined to the end, but we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. Okay, so I got some stuff we're going to do next week, but I want you to write this down. Okay, just write down pick sponsor. Okay, I'm going to give you 6 things. Picking a sponsor, right? And hopefully you'll be like this. 1, sober. Kind of important. 2, done the work. I got this from a fella named Scott. I listened to one of his tapes. 3, has sponsor. 4, will tell truth even when it hurts. And I'll go back again. 5, active in service work. Right? Arrow, attitude of gratitude means gratitude is action. Right? Active in service work, arrow, attitude of gratitude means gratitude is action. And then 6, loves to laugh. Loves to laugh, right? I want to have fun, man. I don't want a Debbie Downer. Right? And I got it. If we got time next week, I got a wonderful joke. John heard it when he heard me give step 12, but I'll do it next week. So again, sober, done the work, has sponsor, will tell truth even when it hurts, active in service work, attitude of gratitude means gratitude is action. And loves to laugh. You know, unfortunately, I see people, man. There was one poor fella. We had a gratitude meeting on Thanksgiving, and this guy's been sober 7 years. And when it got to him, he said, "I ain't grateful for anything." Right? And I mean, I don't know. He says he doesn't believe in doing the steps in the big book. He says he does them out of the 12 and 12, but there's no instructions in the 12 by 12. So I'm going to end, guys, by saying all of us are equal in God's eyes. God doesn't see any of us as substandard. God wants all of us to succeed, to be sober, to experience love, and to have a good life. So let us end with the 7-step prayer.
Gratitude is action.
On page 76.
That word means.
So we are on the 7-step prayer on page 76. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. All right, guys, I'm going to try. There's so much that we never have enough time, but it is.